Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily with Andrew Hustler Paterson and Michael Remis.
Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome to a Tuesday edition of Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Great to be back after an awesome weekend down at Arrowhead in Kansas City. Big thanks to Connor for jumping in, and great job to Remo for holding down the fort while I was away for a couple days. Had an amazing weekend. Saw the Chiefs move on to the AFC Championship game. Watched all the other games. It was great. And by the way, I want to give a special shout out to my pal Big Mike down in KC. He's the bartender at the Diamond Club for many years during at the Royal Stadium. He has a bar now in KC called the Davenport. He, through being friends with me, has sort of turned into a big Jets fan and was able to get the Jets-Calgary game on, at least for the third period, after we got out of the stadium. So special thanks to him. Unfortunately, saw Dustin Wolf kind of blank the Jets in that third, and I guess they did score one, but that wasn't enough. And then last night, the team followed up that performance with one of the bigger duds of the year. And if you heard some of the postgame, which we'll play for you, this was a Scott Arniel postgame unlike anything that we've seen. It was Bones-esque. He was pissed big time about that game last night. And listen, I mean, as much as the result of the game was not, and the way the game was played was not what you want to see, there's a bigger worry coming out of yesterday's game. And that, of course, is the status of Captain Adam Lowry, who is so important to this team. And we really saw it last night between Adam Lowry leaving in the first period and not returning, Gabe Lardy being out at times. The blender came out in industrial one. We saw all sorts of different combinations. But the Jets just weren't able to generate very much. They weren't able to get into those areas where most of the goals are scored. But it was the defensive blunders that were capitalized on in a big way by Utah. But, something that we really haven't seen the Jets do very much and very often this year. It happened a bunch last night. Dylan Sambrick in particular, for the brilliant season that he's had a very, very rough night. And they took it on the chin, losing 5-2 to the Utah HC, who are actually here Friday night as the Jets get back. But the team moves on to Denver today. I believe today is the afternoon where Kevin Cheveldayoff is going to sit down with members of the traveling media. Mike McIntyre is on the road for the Winnipeg Free Press. Murat Atesh is on the road for the Athletic. Murat will join us tomorrow, so I'm not sure if this is going to make it to the Jets YouTube or anything like that. Obviously, we'll be able to read about it in the Free Press and the Athletic, but we'll be able to talk about it all with Murat tomorrow, which should be fun. As far as today's show goes, Sean Reynolds from Sportsnet, Rennie was on fire at the beginning of last night's game. He shared Scott Arniel's sentiments about the way the Jets played last night. So we'll look forward to having Rennie come on. And then Jeff Hamilton as well, a little bit of Jets talk and some Bomber talk surrounding our old friend Andrew Harris, who is now going to be the running backs coach for the Saskatchewan Roughriders. And some interesting reporting that Jeff has on that, which we will get to. But right off the bat, we're going to dive into the Jets. I'm sure I'll have some time at some point to talk about the weekend in the NFL, which I certainly enjoyed. And, of course, the upcoming championship games on the weekend. And later on, after Jeff joins us, we're also going to remember Tom McVie, who was the head coach of the Winnipeg Jets, 879 Avco Cup Championship, was the first head coach for the Winnipeg Jets, moving to the National Hockey League, and was really a larger-than-life character. Geoff Kirbyson, who, of course, wrote Broken Ribs and Popcorn, of which Tom McVie wrote the intro or the foreword for the book, is going to join us to talk about Tom, his time in Winnipeg, and remember him. So it's going to be a big show. It is great to have you all with us. Just before we bring in Michael Remis, welcome to everyone watching on YouTube. Hit that thumbs up button if you haven't already. And make sure you're subscribed to the channel. And shout out to all you podcast listeners as well. Do want to thank the great sponsors that we've got that make the show happen each and every day. Princess Auto, Cool Bet Canada, Fun Times in the Lock Shop earlier today. Check that one out for much more on the Chiefs in the NFL on the weekend. Of course, Rolly's Transfer, Manitoba Battery, fansfirst.ca, Wallace & Wallace, the Winnipeg Jets, F Apparel, Little Brown Jug, Royal Sports, Boston Pizza, and we'll get to a why not question of the day for our friends at Not Autocorp over at Waverly and McGillivray. And it's apparently warming up a little bit, but I know Donnie and the gang at Manitoba Battery have been real busy lately. That was pretty gnarly coming back into the city, but let's get to it. Michael Remis joins us now, and Remo, lots to get to, but first off, great job hosting the last couple days. I know I fired you guys a few messages. Greg and I, as we were driving back, got the YouTube show on in the car, got a chance to catch all of yesterday's program, and a lot of fun stuff to talk about yesterday. Not so much to get things going today with that dud by the Visitors last night in the NHL's newest market.
Yeah, yesterday was fun. Welcome back. Great to have you here, Huss. Appreciate the kind words. And yesterday was fun. I had Jamie Thomas on. Just said to him, hey, man, you had Dylan Sandberg on the Ground Control podcast. How great has he been? And, wasn't his best game yesterday. Wasn't the team's best game. And I think when you're watching that, staying up, it wasn't quite a West Coast game with the 8:30 start Mountain Time. When you watch that and that dud of a game, and you hear Nikolai Ehlers, express his frustration, and Scott Arniel after the game, I think, you know that they know, hey, this wasn't an acceptable performance. They'll look to improve moving forward. But that was certainly a tough one for their first game in Utah. And in our Discord last night, some listeners were making jokes that everyone knows us. First game on the road after a long homestand, basically a scheduled loss, right, Huss? Isn't that how it works? They'll get him. They'll be fine. They'll get him the next one. It's just tough heading out on the road. They're so used to playing at home. After being home since January 2nd, they just forgot how to do the whole road thing. It was just way out of their routine, right?
Listen, they were probably quite happy and fortunate to be out of Winnipeg yesterday with how bloody cold it was here. The last few days have been absolutely ugly. And thanks again for taking care of Friday. The original plan was not for me to not be there on Friday. But as we all saw what happened with that crazy blizzard, basically had to leave right after the hockey game to get over the border and get out of the danger zone, which we did. But it did mean not being in there. Yes, I see. Son of Dirk. Jamie Thomas is a Casey hater big time. Listen, the ranks of those opposing the Chiefs continue to grow. He does have some CDS. CDS is a growing problem. Chiefs derangement syndrome, that is. But hey, listen, it reminds me of how much I hated the Patriots a few years ago. So it's good to be in that situation. We do have an amazing AFC Championship game setting up, which we will certainly get to coming up over the next few days. But, I mean, Remis, let's dive right into this because there was some very, very interesting post-game heat from Scott Arniel right off the bat. Listen, it was basically, Reem, did it not remind you of Bones at some of his most angry? We haven't seen that a lot from Scott Arniel. It's gone quite well, but this was a little bit of a different side of the head coach who was like legit steaming when he talked to Mike after the game.
Yeah, Scott Arniel seems like a pretty even-keeled guy most of the time, but when he gets mad, we've seen it at officials a couple times this year. Gets hot. You can see the steam coming out of his ears there, and I think yesterday to Mike McIntyre had to bite his tongue a little. Careful choice of words. But he did say, what was the line? It was a horseshit game or something like that. So we haven't seen that from Arniel. And you haven't had to. I mean, they're in first place. This is a great team, but it wasn't their night yesterday, and Scott Arniel let everyone know how what he felt. He said, we'll play the clip. He said, embarrassing about the team's performance. So, again, haven't had that really this year, but Scott Arniel trying to take charge here before it spirals out of control. He's got a tough game Wednesday.
Well, yeah.
That's tomorrow in Colorado. That's tough. There's altitude there. Same time zone, though, as we just, oh, man, Hustler, the internet. I don't know what's going on here, but it just hasn't been great. As we wait for Hustler to return, here's Scott Arniel with Mike McIntyre. Shout out to Mike and the Free Press, the only traveling media, although Murat is there today in Denver meeting with Kevin Cheveldayoff. Here is Scott Arniel and Mike McIntyre asking about the game after the game.
Scott, we just heard pretty frank assessments from Nikolai Ehlers and Dylan DeMello, both saying not going to win many games at all playing the way you guys did tonight. So they recognize it, but any thoughts as to why you guys played that way tonight?
That was embarrassing. That was of all the games this year, that was the most embarrassing game. For me, for our players, I take full credit. I got to be the one that has to hold these guys accountable, make sure we're better. That was embarrassing. We were from top to bottom, we did a job.
Top to bottom, did a horseshit job, according to Winnipeg Jets head coach Arniel. And we'll go down the list here. Arniel said the puck management needs to be better. Saw a couple giveaways leading to odd man rushes. Not what you want to see.
It was really big in the sense that, we didn't win a whole lot of battles. They got in on the forecheck, created turnovers. Even though it was 0-0 for a long stretch there, we still didn't get enough out of opportunities and didn't do enough to win that hockey game. Just our execution, a lot of those things, just not good enough. That's on me. I got to make sure, I got to push these guys to be a heck of a lot better than that.
Yeah, and you know what? The only person as pissed off as Arniel was at the beginning of those clips, Remis, is me right now with these internet outages that keep on happening and hijacking the program. I didn't want to have anything to do with Bell Let's Talk Day tomorrow, but I might need to if my freaking Bell internet keeps on crapping out like this. This is absurd. I would be interested to know. This has happened around here often, but is anyone else having like 1 to 60 to 90 second sort of internet breakups? It's very frustrating. But anyways, back to the coach, Remis. Very clear. The overall effort of the club, the willingness to get to the area, just winning battles, which the Jets have done so well, wasn't there last night. And then when you combine that with some pretty significant defensive blunders, you end up on the wrong side of the scoreboard, and you have a very angry head coach with the hockey club.
Yeah, I mean, we're there. David Gustafson, he had the breakaway early. Actually, some nice speed from the Gus bus on that one, but the scoring chances not there. You're leaving Hellebuck out to dry. And I'm listening to Kenny and Rennie, and Rennie's going to come on and say this, I'm sure. But it just shows you, how Hellebuck, his play, when the Jets play the structure in front of him, you're not giving up these odd man rushes where they're going tic-tac-toe to three guys and drawing him, 2 feet out of his net for an empty net tap-in. The structure is there. They make it easy for Connor Hellebuck. But when you're giving up multiple odd man rushes, certainly tough for him. And I do wonder, Huss, about goal scoring now. They did have some wins. The Vancouver game. Vancouver no-showed, but you look at the Calgary game, 1 goal. Last night, 1 goal. Seattle, only 2 goals. So I don't know. You're on a streak here of 3 games in a row now, where you're just scoring 2 goals in 2 games and 1 goal in another. That's not going to be enough to win games going forward. So certainly, I think it's kind of on the back burner. You gave up 5, but in the last 3, you've scored. You've only scored 5, and I don't know if that's a recipe for long-term success here, but we'll see what happens tomorrow night.
Yeah, but as Arniel said, this was a 0-0 game, and they sort of did it to themselves. I kind of liken it to the Ravens on Sunday. What was a close game didn't go their way, and you look back and, was it the other team that just did some stuff that beat us? Well, not really. In the Ravens case, it was some turnovers that killed them. And it was turnovers that killed the Winnipeg Jets last night. And again, Dylan Samberg gets a pass for a bad game. Everyone will have a bad game or two during the season. That was it for Samberg last night. What is important is that they just leave that one in Utah, move on, and are better for it. The other thing, Remis, that I know Arnie didn't really have an update on, that we're hoping to get some more clarity on, is the status of Captain Adam Lowry. Lowry only played 5 minutes in the game last night, left in the first period, did not return to the bench. And listen, they have dealt with a bunch of defensive injuries up front. It's really just been Mason Appleton as of late that's been out of the lineup. Any extended loss of Adam Lowry would be, I don't want to say devastating, because you'd hope that the team would be able to step up and rise up. But, I mean, he's having a career year. He is such an important player, and he has been so good and looks so good with Nikolai Ehlers and Alex Iafallo on that second line right now. So complicating the loss last night was the fact that we don't know where Adam Lowry's at right now. And as I said, commence the prayer circle, Jet fans, because they need to get 17, the guy with the C on his chest, back in the lineup.
Yeah, so we're waiting for an update on Adam Lowry, says I argue with everyone in the chat about internet providers here. Waiting for the update on Adam Lowry. Certainly a tough loss. There was a bit of a scare with Gabriel Velarde getting into a collision. He left the game for a bit, did come back, but Adam Lowry, we'll see if he's going to practice. But Mike noting an hour ago the Jets were supposed to skate starting at 2 p.m. and they just canceled their skate. Mike McIntyre reporting that. So we may not get an update. Mike will be sitting down with Kevin Cheveldayoff. Him and Murat are there. I'm not sure who else will be there, but State of the Union chat with Cheveldayoff. But no updates really on Adam Lowry, and it seems like we're not going to get one because they canceled the practice.
Well, if that's the case, then before they get into the usual, okay, what's going on at the trade deadline, the first question to Chevy should be, how's Adam Lowry?
Yes.
I mean, you think about this going up against Colorado with the way that those guys played last week, in the first game, that it was Ehlers Iafallo with Adam Lowry completely shutting down the McKinnon line. There's no real plan B, I think, if Adam Lowry's not there, and it's going to take everybody to step up. Speaking of Ehlers, continues to be one of the most blunt and honest and often his own harshest critic. He spoke after the game. I thought he was the best Jet last night. But he talked about the injury to Lowry and just talked about the game overall that just wasn't up to their standard.
It sucks. He's our captain. He's our leader. Plays the right way every single shift he goes out there. Huge part of this team. And a special guy. You don't want to see anyone get injured. But, every injury stings. So, it's not fun.
Yeah, and then obviously Gabe has that scare as well, and he's gone for a bit, throws everything kind of into chaos. Do you think that contributed to maybe a tough second period at all for you guys?
No, not at all.
How would you explain that, kind of how that period played out?
We don't. It's pretty simple. We don't play the right way. Long shifts, turnovers. And I mean, they're a good team. Like, you don't take anything away from them. They're a really good team, and they dominated us today. It's as simple as that. But we're not winning the Stanley Cup with the way that we're playing today.
All right, so there's Nikolai Ehlers not pulling any punches. And, one of the other things that was, I think, frustrating for the Jets, but you probably have to look at themselves. This is the third time in 10 games where they have not drawn a penalty. And with the nuclear power play that's helped them so much, that puts it all on winning the game at 5-on-5 without maybe the Jets' best asset right now to their game offensively. Ehlers talked about not drawing a penalty for the third time in 10 games.
I mean, is it a mix of, could they have called one? Absolutely, but overall, when it happens as much as it's happening right now, it's on us. Obviously we don't go down to get a power play, but we're obviously not playing the right way and getting inside and creating the penalties against. So, yeah, it's on us.
All right, Nikolai Ehlers from last night. And one more, you do have to park this one and move ahead. A huge divisional game tomorrow night in Denver against the Avalanche. Here's what Nick had to say about moving forward as a team coming out of Utah last night.
Well, you look yourself in the mirror. Like I said, that is not Winnipeg Jets hockey. It's not the first time this year we've played this way. And when you don't play the right way in this league, it doesn't matter who you're playing against. You're not winning that game. And you're letting our goalies down. And, we have the team in here to do something great. And when we play the right way, we are dominant. We are great. And it is pretty simple. So, yeah.
Remis, that might have been the best soundbite we've had from a post game all year. I mean, you don't want to see a game go that way, but between Arneal talking about the game that was embarrassing and horseshit, and then Ehlers there, I have to say that's some of the most frank and honest we heard from any player at any time. And I can't say I'm surprised that we got it from Ehlers, because he's certainly one that's willing to tell it the way it is.
Yeah, Ehlers has always been pretty honest with his comments. I think Dylan DeMello as well, who spoke. And again, they haven't had to speak like this because they've played so well. And maybe for us, it's more interesting when you have these type of sound bites than, hey, we played great, we're first place, we're awesome. But one thing we didn't hear, that maybe some other people or other teams have said is, after a game like that, you know what, we liked our game. There's elements that we liked. We're right there. We got to find that. And you didn't hear that. And I think, I remember, was it Toronto last week where, everyone got on Mitch Marner? He said after the game that he liked their game after, Berube and other players said it was not up to standard. So the players know. But it's one thing to say, hey, you know what, that was not Winnipeg Jets hockey. One thing to come out tomorrow in altitude, same time zone, against the Colorado Avalanche, who lost yesterday afternoon as well, and have an A+ effort, have a game where you can score a couple goals, and do the things that you've been preaching here. Because if you're gonna say, this was embarrassing, and then come out with another subpar effort, well, then your words kind of are meaningless.
Yeah, I love that you popped in time zone as well. You also dropped the time zone in one of the clips for the runway recently, the Jets show that people are going on. We're joking about the time zone, but altitude. Listen, Denver's not an easy place to play, and Colorado's a hell of a hockey team. And I think every guy in that room knows they're going to need to be a hell of a lot better than they were last night if they want to compete against a team that is going to be gunning for them, considering they were shut out. Was it last week here against the Winnipeg Jets, or 2 weeks ago? So there you have it. Now, Cheveldayoff did speak yesterday as well. And again, it was with Dan Robertson during the intermission. It wasn't that we were kind of expecting him to just lay out his playbook, and I don't expect him to do that today with Murat, Mike, and anybody else that's on the road with the club. But he did talk about, look ahead to the deadline. And Dan asked him if he's feeling pressure to upgrade the team before the March 7th trade freeze in the NHL.
Well, I think we've shown we've always been aggressive, if the opportunity is there. I think That people have to understand about a trade deadline is, you never know what's going to be available. And I've said it before and I'll say it again, it has to come down to fit. But, sometimes there's, those players that are just automatic fits that are out there. And some of them you have to maybe sit back and try and see, is this going to be the right thing? But, one thing that is for sure, that you learn over time is that for 47 games, this group has earned what they've gotten. There's obviously 25, some odd more games, ahead of us that there's a lot of runway that, the story is not written yet, but this group obviously is, has shown a lot of passion in trying to do things right.
All right, so there's Kevin Cheveldayoff from last night's broadcast with Dan Robertson. Just before we bring Rennie in, there was one more from Chevy, which will be of particular interest to most Winnipeg Jet fans. He was asked if he started contract talks with Nikolai Ehlers in particular.
I haven't had any negotiations with any of the free agents yet, as far as sitting down and talking to them about actual nitty gritty of contracts. But I have had conversations with many of the the RFA and UFA free agents.
All right, so there's Kevin Cheveldayoff on that. As we mentioned, Chevy today at some point this afternoon is going to be sitting down with the traveling media for a little bit of a mid-season update, and certainly there'll be questions about contracts and certainly about the deadline as well. And hopefully, whether it's from the coach or the GM, we'll have some sort of clarity on Adam Lowry's status going into tomorrow night's game after missing yesterday. If you caught Kenny and Rennie last night, Rennie came out on fire, as many Jet fans felt, and certainly the way Scott Arniel felt once we heard him hit the podium. We're going to bring in Sean Reynolds from Sportsnet and Kenny and Rennie in just a minute. Before we do that, got to give a big shout out to our friends at Rolly's Transfer, the family-owned and operated, most trusted name in moving in Manitoba, the experts when it comes to getting you to your next destination. And I will say, I was running around on Thursday before meeting the gang down at the rink for another WST night in the game against the Kraken. I was on Wellington Crescent, and what do I see to my right? The new Rolly's WST truck on the road. It was great to see it in person for the first time. Keep your eyes out for that. We'll do some sort of a contest this summer. When you see it on the road, you snap a pic, and we'll do something for that. I'm looking forward to it. But listen, Rolly's, great sponsor of ours, and as I mentioned, the most trusted name in moving in Manitoba. If you have a move coming up in 2025, head on over to their website at Rollies.com. In the top right corner, you can click on request an estimate. Let them, first of all, put in the promo code WST for a special discount on moving services and moving supplies. Let them know when and where you are moving and what you need to move. And the friendly staff at Rollies will turn it around quickly, let you know what it's going to cost you, give you a great quote, and get you locked in to get the white glove treatment from Rollies on your next move. For your next move, make it Rollies. Find out more, request an estimate today over at Rollies.com. As I mentioned right off the opening of the show, I know our friends at Manitoba Battery have been busy the last few days. This is what we talked about, the teeth of the Winnipeg winter. And listen, you have to make sure you're going to be able to get from point A to point B and not be that guy calling your buddies or your brother or somebody for a boost because your car won't start. The battery needs to be good to go. If you're wondering how your battery's doing, pop by Logan Avenue or Dovercourt Drive, either of the two Manitoba Battery locations, for a free battery test. And if you do need one, you'll be able to shop local, get the best prices in town, period. Beating the pants off the big box stores at Manitoba Battery. Whether it's for your car, your truck, all of your battery needs, Manitoba Battery has you covered with the best prices in town. And if that car's at your place and it won't start, good news. You can't leave, so you don't have to. Manitoba Battery will deliver it to you for free anywhere inside the perimeter with any purchase over $60. It's just that easy. For all your battery needs, Manitoba Battery, 2 Winnipeg locations and online at manitobabattery.com. And hey, guys, if you've been working on yourself in the new year, part of going around with that, you might want some new clothes. And listen, if you're looking to up your menswear game in 2025, head on down to F Apparel. The guys will get you set up. The best in custom men's clothing, including custom suits beginning at just $400, along with chinos, golf pants, custom shirts, both tucked and untucked styles, and an incredible selection of menswear accessories, the best you'll find anywhere. Pop on down and see them, 190 Smith Street downtown. You can also check them out online at EPHapparel.com. Check out all their programs, their promos, what they can do if you're getting married this year. Great deal for the wedding party if you get your suits at F Apparel. And of course, you can also go schedule an appointment to come in and get suited up at F Apparel down at 190 Smith Street. And again, online at that's EPHapparel.com. All right, let's fire it up. Rennie is with us now. Sean Reynolds, host of Kenny and Rennie and reporting for Sportsnet on Hockey Night in Canada. Ren, what is going on? How are you, my friend?
I'm doing great. It's been a while. Good to see you, Huss.
Oh, it is great to see you too as well. I got back last night in time to watch the game, was underwhelmed with the game, but I was not underwhelmed with you coming in hot right out of the gate. You know, it was a performance that was, dreadful in some ways, but I still don't know what to make of it. Like, overall, there hasn't been many games like that last night overall. And the thing is, this team is good enough that they were still right in that hockey game, well into it, even after Adam Lowry was lost. What was really concerning, what was kind of surprising, to be honest, Sean, was just the level of calamity when it came to the defensive mistakes that led to some of the most wide open, odd man rushes that, credit to Utah, ended up in the back of their net. I mean, where did the problems start for you last night when it came to the Jets' performance?
Well, I'll be honest. I don't see it the way the vast majority of Winnipeg Jets fans do, or even what I was hearing from the Winnipeg Jets locker room and their coaching staff. I think that if you scrub and erase two Dylan Samberg mistakes on the blue line, which you're kind of talking about there, we're sitting here talking about what a resilient group this is, and they stuck with the structure because I thought their structure defensively was really good last night. You made the point, there's some, mistakes that we're not typically used to seeing the Winnipeg Jets make at the blue line. You'd like to just say that, they had an off night and guys had a couple of bad nights. I'm not going to go down that road. This is the second time they've played Utah this year. Both games look the same to me. I think Utah came with a good game plan. I think they forced the Jets into some mistakes that the Jets don't typically get forced into. But if they don't make those mistakes, this is probably a 2-2 hockey game going into overtime, and the Jets maybe pull it out, and we're all sitting here talking the same thing that we've been talking for a long time. This is the same game as a lot of the games the Jets have played where we are praising the Jets because their defensive zone structure is so good. And it's just the pucks ended up in the back of the net because of some uncharacteristic mistakes. But I don't know. I'm going to give Utah their due. Yeah, they're not a playoff team. They're not going to be a playoff team. Utah is one of these teams, though, that can bite you. And if you go take a look at their history so far this year, they've been that team, not just with the Winnipeg Jets. They've been that team with a lot of really good teams. They've got a really good coach who knows how to game plan for the opposition, knows how to read tape, knows how to do all the kind of things you need to do to prepare specifically for specific teams. I think he, being in the Central Division, he's had a good look at the Jets. I like the game, from a hockey standpoint, I like the game plan that they have come up with against the Jets. The last two times they've played them, they've challenged them. They haven't let the Jets churn on them the way that they do and lean on teams the way that they typically do. They've done a good job of kind of turning the table, turning the momentum in their direction, and it makes me fascinated to see what happens in the next game between these two teams.
I'm kind of with you on that. Certainly I thought it was relatively even through, the first 30 minutes or so, and then things sort of compounded. The first goal went in, it was the play before the end of the second period that turned that 1-0 game into a 2-0 game that I think really sucked the life out of the Jets. But the one thing I didn't think that they did as well as they have done more often than not this year is, battle, take care of the puck, and get to some of those areas where you score goals. And there was a lot of shots from the outside, hoping for a deflection. And listen, sometimes you got to take that and you do it. But I mean, based on what you just said, were you surprised at how hot Arniel was after the game and what you heard from Nikolai Ehlers? Because if you hadn't watched that game and you just tuned into the post game, you would think that was, according to Arniel, probably was their most, quote, embarrassing game of the entire season.
Yeah, I'm not surprised, because the one thing I've noticed with the Winnipeg Jets since Bones took over this team is they are very in tune with what the coach says. So once the game is over and the coach speaks to them, you will notice that you're not hearing the coach say one thing and the room say something entirely different. So if Scott Arniel comes out after that game and says to his team, that was an embarrassing performance, we can do better, you're going to hear that from the Winnipeg Jets. That was an embarrassing performance, we could do better. I still contend that there are a number, Huss, maybe 5, maybe 6 victories the Jets have had this year where it was almost the exact same game. And they, I think they had a victory over San Jose where, I thought they showed worse than they did in this game and won that game. And while the Jets were, not the happiest with that game, they also came out and said, well, it's a sign of doing the right things and playing the game the right way. So I was maybe surprised by how hot and how miffed they were. It's the second straight game, to your point, that they didn't really get inside. That says something. But listen, the Winnipeg Jets are a team that makes it almost impossible to get inside. When it was defensive zone play in that game, the Utah Hockey Club did not get inside. It was breakdowns they took advantage of. So you can't have it both ways. You can't say, well, we're this team that just doesn't let teams inside and we protect the guts of the ice and we protect the home plate and we just don't let other teams there. And then when you have the same thing happen to you against teams who game plan well, and listen, this is something that both the Calgary Flames and the Utah Hockey Club are good at. They're grinding teams when they need to be, who can protect the guts of the ice and make things a little bit difficult. They just can't score very well. Now, they got the opportunities based off the Jets' mistakes, but what I saw the Jets struggling with was the same thing Utah was struggling with when they were in the zone trying to score. Trying to score against the Jets and trying to get to the front of the net is trying to run through a thicket in the bush and trying to let a shot off in the middle of a willow tree, right? There's just not enough room to do it. There was a lot of that happening. The Jets, I know one time Mark Scheifele got the puck and he went to shoot it and there was a stick there redirecting it. We saw a number of shots redirected up into the mesh in behind the net. I'm giving, and this is why I'm saying this, I think it's fascinating. I think it's arrogant to think that the Jets just, when they put in an effort, beat everybody on every single night, and if they get beaten, if they get beat well, that they must have just had the night off. I'm telling you right now, in an alternate universe somewhere, Dylan Samberg doesn't make those 2 mistakes. The Jets win that game, and we're all sitting here talking about what a resilient, grinding group this is.
Well, the one thing I think it's quite clear that we can all agree on is that when the Jets, make those sort of defensive errors and give up 2-on-1s and 3-on-1s the way they did it, it makes Connor Hellebuck's job a lot more difficult. Because the fact of the matter is that when it's simply 1-on-1 or the goaltender sees the shot, he's probably saving it right now. And, he looked a little miffed at times because, as he said, for the most part, they had not been giving up those sort of chances. And, I am with you on this. Credit to Utah. And Logan Cooley with that shot, looking off the passer and putting up, the Utah Hockey Club made, they looked like a top team with the way that they finished on those chances that the Jets provided to them throughout the game last night.
Yeah, and this is, to me, an example of a game, and I said it on the show last night, Connor Hellebuck is going to win the Vezina Trophy. He should win the Vezina Trophy, but I will scream this. I did last year, and I'll do it again this year from the top of the mountains. Connor Hellebuck is extremely fortunate to play behind the team that he plays behind. He's extremely fortunate to play behind the coaching staff that he's played behind, not just this past year, but the previous couple of years. The Winnipeg Jets are are one of the, best defensive teams, the best defensive team in the league last year and one of the best in the league this year, not just because of Connor Hellebuyck. They make his job easy in a way that they keep a lot of shots to the outside, they keep a lot of shots low angle, and they really do protect the guts of the ice. This is an example of what it can look like when you don't do that. The shots and to your point, give credit to Utah for finishing those opportunities, but Connor Hellebuyck got a taste last night of what probably 15, 16, 18, 20 of the other goaltenders in the NHL face on a regular night. It's why you can take a guy like Mackenzie Blackwood and have him play for the San Jose Sharks and then move him to the Colorado Avalanche, and his numbers jump so starkly. The team that plays in front of you matters, and it matters in how you are able to read things. Connor Hellebuyck has talked about it in the past. The Jets make hockey extremely predictable for him. They didn't last night, and you got to look at what his performance can turn into on a night where it's not easier or predictable the way that the Jets typically make it for him.
Hey, Sean, this'll give you a laugh as well as everybody else in chat. We know that Dylan Samberg had a really, really rough night. He's been great all season long. I expect him to be back and be better and move on from it. How nuclear would have the Jets fan base been if it was 64 instead of 54 with the gaps that were made last night?
Oh my God, there would be Portage and Main right now. There would be about 3,000 people with torches and pitchforks, and they would be waiting there for the Jets when the team
Imagine the comment
arrived.
section last night.
Yeah, and I mean, listen, like Dylan Samberg hasn't had a game like that this year. Okay,
not even close.
Not even close. And so he had an off night, and so everyone can look at that, and rightly so. The fans are sitting here right now and saying, yeah, but we've got reason to be that way. We don't have a reason to be like that with Dylan Samberg, and they don't. Dylan Samberg has been phenomenal this year. I said it. I think losing him this year was the most challenging injury the Jets have had in the last 3 years. I think it's no mistake that he came back to the lineup, and all of a sudden the Jets just clamped down defensively. He made two big mistakes, the kind of mistakes that when you make them, it's odd man rushes the other way and it ends up in the back of their net. But that same fan base that we are talking about knows that Dylan Samberg doesn't do this, so they're going to give him a 1-off. They'll probably give him a 2-off, a 3-off, a 4-off, as they should. He's a great player. He means a lot to this team. Logan Stanley has been more mistake prone. We've seen more examples of stuff like that. We saw an example, probably the best save that Connor Hellebuyck made in the game last night was on a 2-on-1 that was created by a similar mistake by Logan Stanley that just didn't end up in the back of the net. So, I mean, I've said this before. I don't like the kind of nastiness that has seeped into the discourse when it comes to Logan Stanley. I don't think it's fair. He's just a hockey player trying to make a living. He's been given those opportunities by the Winnipeg Jets time and time again. The coaches want him in there. That's their decision. I just think that, it's become far too, I think this is the point you're making. It's become far too easy when he makes a mistake just to pile on and pile on and pile on and not remember this is a human being who's trying the best he can. He's not going out and making those mistakes on purpose. The frustration, if it's there, is probably a little too high given where this team is in the standings. I don't think people should be that frustrated given how they're getting by with this player. But B, that frustration has to be directed towards, the coaching staff as well that keeps making the decision to put him in spite of some of these mistakes that are made, and the general manager and the management group who've, let a guy go down to Minnesota that everyone is really frustrated with. Like at every turn, they've tried to give every opportunity to Logan Stanley. He's in the lineup over and over again, and those fans are getting frustrated. They should, realize that frustration happens because the management group and the coaching group have kept that going and going.
Moving up front, I mean, the big story, like I can handle the loss. What I'm not going to say it kept me up at night, but it is very concerning, was the loss of Adam Lowry. Now, we do not have, an update unless you've heard anything that hasn't been out publicly on where he's at. I guess just thoughts on what this team would look like for any stretch without Adam Lowry, how taxing that would be. I mean, at the same time, what you've thought about the recent line combination with Iafallo and Nikolai Ehlers playing with Lowry over the course of the past week.
Well, I like the idea. Okay, first, let's get to what it's going to look like without Adam Lowry if he's out for a significant amount of time. You use the term taxing. It's taxing to play against the Winnipeg Jets because of Adam Lowry. I just think that this is one of these things where if a team comes to play the Winnipeg Jets and they see that Lowry's out of the lineup, a lot of the scorers on the other team are going, yes, you know what I mean? Because they don't have to go through the battle of attrition that is playing against Adam Lowry. And on the other side of that, just the ability that he has to kind of drive play towards the other side of the ice. I talked about Dylan Samberg being one of the most challenging injuries this team has had to face. I think things are going to be okay. I mean, he goes into the boards and then he ends up playing the rest of the first period. I don't know that he's going to be out long term after pulling something off like that. I would be really surprised if he would be out long term. Maybe a couple of games. Maybe we'll see him back right away after this. But I think that when you're talking about order of importance, he is right near the top of the list for the Winnipeg Jets. And I think it further shows us what we saw when Nemesnikov went out, that really this team, as deep as it is, to lose a centerman, all of a sudden their depth gets really challenged. Now, I like the idea of moving Lowry up alongside Nikolai Ehlers, and I like the idea of moving Iafallo up. I've been calling for it for a couple months now. I think he should be moving up the lineup and trying to see what he can do in that second line role. I've called for it with Cole Perfetti, who just continues to struggle and get points on the board. So I've thought Iafallo could use an opportunity up there. But just the idea of trying to get something to boost Nick Ehlers, I like that, because Nick Ehlers is last night, he moved up to above a point per game pace. It's hard to believe he's doing that the way that second line has really been underperforming offensively. So I like that idea, but to me, it's I had so many people reaching out to me. I don't know about you, Huss, but people were reaching out and saying, well, forget trading at the trade deadline. Let's just go with this. And we've got everything figured out. I don't agree with that at all. And I think the Winnipeg Jets are going to take that third line when they get it back together, when Lowry's back and Appleton and everyone is back. And then they're going to go to the trade deadline and trying to address building up some second line scoring. To me, this is just a Groundhog Day of last year. I think they're going out looking for a 2C. They're going out looking for probably a winger up in that second line spot. And they're going to be looking for probably a bigger splash on the back end than they did with Colin Miller last year.
You know what? I'm sort of 50-50 on that. Like, I still think there's a need for a center, but I am absolutely in on giving this combination some more runway to play together with each other. I mean, if Nikolai Ehlers can still produce, and I think there's an argument that he's producing more playing with Lowry and Iafallo than he was on that second line.
Agreed.
And and listen, maybe this is a combination of recency bias. We don't have a large sample size, but Sean, I mean, I think back to the game that the team played against Colorado about 10 days ago when this line was just put together, and they were going up all night against the Nathan McKinnon line, and the Colorado Avalanche had 0 high danger opportunities in the second and third period and 3 for the entire game. Ehlers scored twice. Like, I don't expect that each and every night. But if you were to tell me that a line combination with Adam Lowry, Iafallo, and Ehlers was going to win their matchup in the top matchup night, when you have the opportunity to put them up against guys, I wouldn't be changing a thing. And listen, we can call one line the second line, one line the third line. The fact of the matter is, Adam Lowry will be, regardless of who he's playing with, he's going to be getting the biggest, toughest matchups every single night. If Nikolai Ehlers can thrive in that role, I think that is a huge boost for the Winnipeg Jets, because then you can look at maybe finding a center that can fit in in the middle six, and call the lines again what you want in the middle six to try to get more out of Nino, maybe get Perfetti going. It allows you to load up, and have a fourth line, a few more options for it. And maybe most importantly, when you're thinking about what you have with the ability to trade, maybe add a little bit more juice to an offer to boost the blue line, as opposed to what has traditionally been a premium spot trying to get a, quote, top six center. So I'm with you in some ways, but I'll tell you what, I would love to see this work more, because I think if it can work, I think it is unexpected, but a great development for Winnipeg.
I've got time for that argument. I mean, I like the idea of it. The one thing that I take away from that, though, is Adam Lowry going to, I'm going to harm my own argument right now by saying Adam Lowry has probably been the Jets' best producer in the playoffs over the last couple of years. But I also have to ask myself, because there was a couple times, even in that game that you were talking about, Nikolai Ehlers gets Adam Lowry the puck in a dangerous spot in the slot, and that's the kind of spot where, like, a guy like Sean Monahan last year, I'm just thinking those are automatic goals for those 2C type players. And I think that Adam Lowry is the kind of guy who can, like, push the puck into the net, or he gets those opportunities where he drives in on it or turns it over. He's a guy gets a lot of breakaways. I just don't know that he can play with the puck to the degree that you need to get the puck into the back of the net the way that you need your 2C to do. So I mean, that's my thing. That's my only thing, is if you're going in to the playoffs with that idea, you're going into the playoffs with the idea that for 4 rounds, you need to be sure that Adam Lowry is going to be able to produce offense. And history tells us that that's not necessarily the case with that player over the course of the regular season. And we don't know enough about this team going deep to know whether or not he's going to do that. So, I mean, you want a secondary scorer. Now, maybe, Huss, you take care of it with exactly what you're talking about. You go and get a guy who you don't have to put as much of a premium on getting someone as big as Sean Monahan. You don't have to go out and spend the money to get a guy like Brock Nelson. You go get another guy who, like you said, maybe just fits in on that third line and gets it going. But the other part of that can be a little bit tricky is if you're relying on getting Cole Perfetti going to do that, that's been a puzzle that really the Jets have not been able to solve the last little while. One puzzle that they do have solved, or two, to be honest, is their first line, which they know produces and they're happy with and content with, and their third line, which they absolutely love the way they chip in scoring here and there, but are able to really grind and wear down teams. And I think that that's a successful tool to have in a 7-game series, and 4 7-game series. So I still think that the Jets know that third line works. If we're talking about experimenting, like you're talking about, keeping the experiment going, I'm interested to see where it goes. But I think the Jets know the things that work with them, and they have not exactly a huge amount of time to figure out the rest of it.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it all comes down to Ehlers. Like, I would have said, if you had said to me before, like, I don't know if Ehlers really fits there. Like, I'm not sure whether Ehlers, like, first and foremost, the Lowry line needs to be able to maintain their level of defensive excellence against the best lines in hockey. If all of a sudden, like, that line isn't losing a lot in that category, and just by definition, having Ehlers on the ice more is going to give you a little bit more offensive pop. Again, we can call the line whatever it is. We know the matchups they're going to get. And I mean, if you tell me right now, speaking of the playoffs, that I'm going to give you a scenario where regardless of what the goals score, like maybe they don't score quite as much, but they're going to play big minutes. They're going to go up against the Nathan McKinnons of the world, and they're going to be on the right end of the ledger. I'll take that every single time. The idea is that, okay, great, you're kind of sawing off their best line, their best attack, and then what can the top line do? What can the third line do with another ad? So I mean, that's why I'm sort of keen to see it more, and I'm kind of dreading to hear that maybe this is something that will keep Lowry out of the lineup for a little bit. But let me quickly ask you about Cole Perfetti before we wrap. Listen, this is the second year in a row where he's had sort of a long stretch of not a lot of production. I think he's a better player this year. I think he battles harder. I think he's got more fight in his game. So like, I don't want this to sound like I'm all over him right now. But considering the makeup, the guys that are doing it, the guys that really do have the coach's trust, what do you think the chances that Cole Perfetti might be a trade chip for the Winnipeg Jets as we get closer to the 7th of March?
Oh, I wouldn't be surprised by that at all, because regardless, the way that he's not producing, especially, okay, let's go by the premise that the Jets go back to their third line as we know it, right? I truly believe that's what they're going to do. Then it puts you in a position where you need to figure out how, to your point, how to get Nikolai Ehlers the help that he needs to continue doing what he's doing, but to be able to do it at the playoff level, right? And so the first thing that you're thinking is, well, you need like a more offensive centerman than Vladislav Nemesnikov. At this stage, you cannot, if you're the Winnipeg Jets management group, if you're the coaching group, you cannot look at this and say, we can just go out and get a 2C and problem solved. That line is ready to go. You are exactly where you were last year, because you do not know if Cole Perfetti is going to be able to be the guy to step onto that line and make it happen. And to be honest, with him going through pretty much the same thing that he went through last year, the answer to that is you should not be expecting that. You should not be expecting that come the playoffs, Cole Perfetti is going to turn everything around and suddenly be putting in, 0.8 points per game or something like that, right? I agree with you 100%, Huss. He's definitely rounding out as a hockey player. He's better defensively. He's good at battling on the boards. But the type of offense that he used to create in the OHL and maybe even in the AHL it's not transferring to the NHL. It transfers in the games that are blowout type games. It transfers into the games where the Jets kind of lean on teams and break them and they just fall out of their structure. In those games, Cole absolutely shows up. But in the other kind of games, like last night is the exact kind of game where you need Cole Perfetti to go out and chip one in to get the Winnipeg Jets going. And you cannot count on him to be that guy so far this year. So as a trade chip, I wouldn't be surprised one bit, because one way or the other, it's starting to look like you are going to have to solve the Cole Perfetti problem. And it looks like the way you do that is going and trying to find a guy to replace him in the lineup than you did that the way you did last year. The one thing that I think is really interesting is there's so many deals this year with teams that are trying to move guys, but bring guys in, right? Like there's, you hear about JT Miller, they're wanting to move him, but they want to bring in like the equal kind of player. And the Rangers have been looking at a guy like Zibanejad, moving him in, and you're hearing about Dylan Cousins, but Buffalo doesn't want futures. They want something right now. The Jets don't have anything to give right now outside of maybe Cole Perfetti. Other than that, the kind of deals that they need to make are the kind of deals where you're sending futures for a guy right now, and we're going to have to wait probably a good 4 weeks or something like that before those deals start becoming available. But if the Winnipeg Jets, unless Cole Perfetti can turn things around and all of a sudden start producing to the degree that you can say as a coaching staff, okay, we trust that this is who this guy is now and who he's going to carry into the playoffs, he's just another issue that this lineup needs to look at solving to be the best, to put their best foot forward heading into the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, like depending on who the trade partner is, if we're talking about a younger team, a rebuilding team, a team that is looking for, some younger players, under team control, he is a guy that I think would have some interest. And listen, and now with Chibrikov being hurt potentially for a long term on the weekend, it does probably, limit some of the opportunities for Chevy when it comes to making that move and not making the deals that they think will give them the best chance to truly compete for a Stanley Cup and have a nice long playoff run. Rennie, always great having you on the program. Very quickly, Sunday, who you got, Chiefs or Bills?
Hey, I sorry to say this. I am hoping for the Bills. I am one
Everyone
of those
is.
people who takes in the refs protecting Mahomes memes
It's called
all
Chiefs
over the place.
derangement syndrome. It's
Yeah,
going
okay.
around everywhere right now.
Sure,
CDS.
sure, Hus. But I do think the Chiefs are going to win. The refs won't let them lose, so that's just the way this goes. But no, I joke. But yeah, they are the new Steelers. I always used to say about the Steelers, the football gods love the Steelers. The calls always seem to go their way. The bounces always go their way. The Chiefs somehow stole the hearts of the football gods a couple of years ago, and they are the new Steelers. So I think that they win. I honestly think they go on and win another Super Bowl.
Have a great one, pal. Enjoyed the show last night, and hopefully the chat will be in a better mood after the game tomorrow night. A big one in Denver, 8:30 puck drop against the Colorado Avalanche. You have a great one. We'll talk soon.
Thanks for having me. Say hi to my guy, Hammy.
Appreciate it. There is Sean Reynolds, of course, Kenny and Rennie. It was a particularly good start last night. Rennie was awesome. And then, I didn't even ask him about Ken's busted mug. Another reason to tune into the YouTube channel. Weber took one in the grill yesterday, and as Rennie said, very humbly last night, he was both the beauty and the brains of the show last night after Ken had taking that puck to the jibs. Hammer is coming up. Looking forward to having this conversation. Let me first, though, as we talk about a big move, well, not necessarily in Bomber land, but a lot of links to the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. It's snowy outside, but it won't be long before we're back at Princess Auto Stadium. We got the schedule last week. We're ready to go for Bomber season. It's going to be a real interesting few weeks in the Canadian Football League as well as we get closer to CFL free agency at the beginning of next month. Of course, Princess Auto is a proud sponsor of the home of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, Princess Auto Stadium. It makes a lot of sense because Princess Auto is founded in Winnipeg, headquartered in Winnipeg, and of course, the place where you'll find the best deals on the most unique assortment of tools and equipment around. Everything you need to complete the projects on your list or start something new is at Princess Auto. Pop by and see them at their Winnipeg locations, Panet Road, Portage Avenue West. You can also shop, pop by and see them in Brandon for you folks out in Westman. You can also shop online 24/7, 365 over at princessauto.com. Looks like Remis was thirsty. We had the Canadian Club running there for that, but I'll tell you what, who isn't? You're looking for a great Canadian whiskey, the oldest, most famous Canadian whiskey we've got. That would be Canadian Club. Also a great supporter of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, is the official spirit of the club and available throughout Princess Auto Stadium. Of course, Canadian Club, you can pick it up at your local Manitoba liquor marts. And when you're there, check out the Canadian Club Original, the Canadian Club Classic, the Canadian Club 100% Rye. And if you're at your local beer store, keep your eyes out for Canadian Club Ginger Ale. Pre-mixed cocktails in a can, a great change-up from beer when you're at your local beer store. Pop by your local Manitoba liquor marts today and look out for Canada's finest Canadian Club, proud sponsors of Winnipeg Sports Talk. And just before we bring in Hammy, do want to thank our friends at Wallace & Wallace for their great support of Winnipeg Sports Talk. Wallace & Wallace are the fencing and overhead door specialists in Winnipeg since 1946. If your property needs the security and protection of a new fence, or if winter's beating it up pretty bad, they've got you covered with vinyl, ornamental, welded wire, chain link, wood fences, whatever you need, they've got it. Not to mention the leaders in temporary fencing for industrial usage. And of course, if you need a new overhead garage door, make sure to talk to the folks over at Wallace & Wallace. They've got the largest selection in town, which means they've got one to perfectly fit your home and add value to it as well at the same time. Wallace & Wallace, give them a call, 452-2700. They'll be happy to come down and give you a free estimate on the job that you need. You can also check them out online at wallacefences.com, wallacedoors.com, or pop by and see them at their showroom on Lowson Crescent, just off of Kenniston. All right, let's welcome in Jeff Hamilton from the Winnipeg Free Press. Hammer, what's up?
Not much, buddy. How are you doing? Just settling into a good week, man. It's been cold as heck. I wore my ski pants to my haircut this morning.
Ooh, No doubt. Hey, hold on one sec before you go. I think we need to select a different mic.
No, we don't.
I think he's just not holding it.
I need to pick up my mic.
There we go.
I need to pick up my mic. Okay, sorry. Are we better? I can hear myself fine, but I guess it matters if you can hear over your system. I think
having the microphone near your mouth would definitely be. We're moving on up right now.
Baby steps here, buddy. Baby steps. I got my hair cut first. I wore ski pants there. I've decided over these last 2 days that I'm just going to travel in ski pants. I don't care if I'm going into the office. I don't care if I'm going into a family. I don't care if I'm going out for dinner. If it's going to be as crazy as it has been these last 2 days, I'm wearing ski pants. I'm not being exposed at all. My car started today, which is really excellent. Everything's just coming up, Jeff, right now, man. It's awesome.
Normalize ski pants. That is the mission of us here in the middle of January in Winnipeg. I'll tell you what. I mean, just speaking of weather, I was planning on leaving on Friday to KC, and we saw that blizzard warning, and I was sort of like, we're getting like a full blizzard warning, like 15 hours in advance. It seemed a little much, but I didn't want to screw with it. So we left Thursday night and got to Fargo, and then, oh my God, I saw some of the, like life-threatening car accidents, pileups. I mean, that was about as gnarly as it gets. And then this deep freeze, we felt it all the way through the Dakotas yesterday coming back. And I think we've got a little bit of a reprieve. We're gonna at least be able to see the teens for highs, which will feel like shorts weather probably, considering how bad the last couple days were. But yeah, we got to tough through it.
You see Adam Bighill? I saw his wife posted on Instagram yesterday. I think he was outside, looked like his kid's school. He was in t-shirts and shorts walking to the car, and it wasn't one of those like
savage.
Well, that's what I mean. I think that was him letting everybody know. He's not going anywhere anytime soon. Nice. Look at that. Right on key. We already showed this. Yeah, it was yesterday.
You know what? That really is savage. Insane, but
I am talking about
ski pants.
Normalizing ski pants, and it looks like Biggie needs about 1 or 2 inches before he's fully shown. So it's wild. Crazy.
Hey, he's played a lot of playoff football outdoors. He's probably a little more prepared for it than most of us. I
don't think anyone would make that argument. He's tougher than me too. So.
Hey, listen, I wanted to get to some hockey and a couple other topics, but Andrew Harris going to the Saskatchewan Roughriders. Needless to say, I was shocked, borderline stunned when I heard that development. I knew he was doing some other things, and I didn't see a turn to coaching coming. But what's behind this? And fill us in a little bit on the initial reach out to the Bombers, the call that apparently didn't get returned.
Yeah, I'm with everybody else. I found out over social media, and I think, like you, Huss, like I'm sure many people who followed Andrew Harris's career, know where he's been, know where he's from, to see that kind of news going over to the dark side, crossing enemy lines, however you want to characterize it, was, pretty shocking. I had a few feelings about it. I'm with you. I wouldn't say I was completely shocked by his wanting to coach, only in that, we had heard for years, I think even leading up to his last year in the CFL, that he was taking over his former junior football league team that he's apparently still associated with, despite not living on the West Coast. So that was something that it looked like he was taking over completely, and then obviously scaled back. So I'm not surprised that he wanted to get involved in football. Of course, I'm surprised about the location. But then you kind of hear a few more things, right? And you think about it a little bit more, and it's not as maybe wild as some might think. Obviously, the location is wild, but he's moved back to Winnipeg, or he's moving back to Winnipeg. So that makes a hell of a lot more sense to live in Regina if you have your why anyone would want to live in Regina, I'm not 100% sure, but at least you have your family in Winnipeg. That's a close drive away. That makes a little more sense. It's the job that he kept saying over and over in his 20-minute interview with reporters yesterday. The Riders are the ones that offered him a job. And to get to what you were saying, I'm sure other people want to hear, is I don't know all the details about Andrew Harris reaching out to Winnipeg. I just know that he reached out to Mike O'Shea, looking for an opportunity, and from what I understand, was never got an answer back. And as I wrote in my story yesterday, I mean, there could be a few different things for that. One, the Bombers are just happy and fine with their running backs coach, Jason Hogan. Anybody who followed Brady Oliveira's stellar campaign last year would have heard him speak glowingly about Jason Hogan and the role that he's played in getting him to being the best player in the CFL. So not really a need there. The other thing, too, is it was no secret. I mean, Andrew Harris has, 2 documentaries, at least one that detailed his exit from Winnipeg. I mean, he showed up to training camp in 2021 after that, I guess let's call it exciting winter for him, out of shape and not ready to go. And that severely damaged the trust of Mike O'Shea. So, you know, I don't know. I think there's some people who are saying the Bombers ghosted him. I guess, yeah, they ghosted him in the sense that they never picked up the phone and called him back and were, I guess, interested in adding him to the staff. The other thing, too, is Mike O'Shea doesn't make decisions lightly. So maybe Mike O'Shea was still very much considering it or thinking about it. We don't know what that answer is. So, and maybe just hadn't gotten back to them. But yeah, needless to say, Andrew Harris was looking for an opportunity, a job in football, and the one in the Riders came calling. The other thing too, why it's not surprising, Huss, is like, I don't necessarily want to call AJ Ouellette like Harris's best friend in the CFL, but it seems pretty damn close to being that. So he's going to be, you know, taking over a role that he gets to work directly with AJ Ouellette day to day and bringing out the most in him. I think one of his big jobs this year will be ensure that AJ Ouellette's playing more than half a season and doesn't, you know, the Riders don't run him to the ground like they did in his first season there last year. And then you consider Corey Mace, right? Corey Mace was the defensive coordinator in Toronto for the 2 years that Andrew was there. You look at a guy like Edwin Harrison, who is the Rough Riders offensive line coach last year and was the running backs coach for the Argos for the 2 years that Andrew Harris was there and would have worked under, right? You got to remember, Andrew Harris, if you would have recalled the 2022 Grey Cup, where he beat the Bombers as a member of Toronto, got his revenge. He talked about that season and about becoming, you know, like a player coach, right? He had the headset on for much of the season when he was injured. He played that role. And really, when he spoke about all of that yesterday, he talked about how he wanted to see firsthand if this is something that he was even interested in doing. And sure enough, you know, it was. And I think Andrew's going to do a great job in the role. Obviously, he's got the resume, but, you know, even in some of the ways he was talking yesterday, like he really is a self-taught guy. You know, he's a guy that's that I don't want to say, you know, those are his words, self-taught. Obviously, he had instruction along the way, but self-taught in how he excels in the CFL, how he prepares, how he watches film, how he, you know, he mentioned yesterday how he, I'm going to probably butcher this, but how he goes up against different defenders. He studies different defenders. So, you know, obviously with his success that he's done a lot, he has a lot of things that he can pass along. I think for a lot of Bomber fans, unfortunately, that won't be going to Winnipeg, and instead will be going to their most hated rival.
It does add another level of intrigue to the rivalry that just simply never does get old, and took a big step forward with the Riders becoming, you know, a respectable team last year and making the playoffs and beating BC, and, you know.
The fallout's so funny though. Like, what do you think of the fallout? Because, like, I mean, I'm not talking about localized fans. The localized fans are hilarious. I find it funny that you have all these people in Regina who are like puffing their chests. They got Andrew Harris, the coach, not Andrew Harris, the player. Like, you know, it's just, I don't know, kind of.
They may have to scrub a few of their timelines.
Well, that's what I was, and that's what I said to Andrew yesterday. Like, I was the only guy from Winnipeg on the call, and so it was all kind of Regina led. And so he was talking about it on more so like, you know, like, what are you going to say to like Regina fans, whatever, blah, blah. And I brought Winnipeg into it, but I reminded them, they weren't very nice to Andrew, right? Like during his whole steroid situation. Like, I mean, Andrew talked openly about how bothered he was by those comments, and and had his own choice words for them. And I recall going back to like, "You got my back, we got your back" chants with the Winnipeg fans. So I don't blame any Winnipeg fans. And this idea that it's just football, no, it's not. It's not just football. Go tell that to Bomber fans who dress up every week, who buy season tickets, who spend thousands of dollars a year. It's not just football, and it's not just the Saskatchewan Roughriders. It's their most hated rival, and I think it's fair. You can have that argument, anyone can go get a job anywhere. Yeah, that's obviously true, but I think it's fair to think that this was, an interesting move.
Well, listen, it is, and it makes it more interesting that he reached out to the Bombers thinking that maybe that would happen here. But you know what, I'll be honest, I hadn't really.
This has only been like a few weeks from what we understand. Like this isn't like, it wasn't like he was going looking for it like months and months ago. Like he only decided to move back to Winnipeg 6 weeks ago. So
coaching is so different than playing. The role is so different. And the way you rolled out, I kind of had just forgotten about Mace. But Ouellette, you're exactly right. Like, to be honest, if you take away,
it's kind of the perfect spot for it.
I was just about to say, you take away Regina, you take away Winnipeg and all this stuff that kind of gets us juiced up and gives us fun conversations. This kind of does seem like the absolutely perfect
and he even
place
said
for
it.
him
Those
to
are
start
those guys I mentioned, those coaching staff, like the players, the respect, like that helps you do the job and it helps you grow in the job, right? Like, that, if you can, same story that if it would have been in Winnipeg, right? You would want guys like, look at Mike O'Shea. Mike O'Shea said to Mike Miller, who didn't even apply for a coordinator job, that you could have this job. And when he told him, "I'm not sure I can do this job. I've never done this job. I know I'm the GOAT, people call me, a special teamer, but I've never been, as you mentioned, has had that role as coach." And Mike O'Shea said to him, "Don't worry, you won't fail on my watch." You know what I mean? So you need that guy. And that guy for Andrew Harris is Corey Mace, is Edwin Harrison. It are guys around them that are going to have his best interest at hand and want to see him grow in that role.
The irony of the whole thing, Jeff, is that those relationships, the connection with Corey Mace, with AJ Ouellette, all that never happens if the breakup between Harris and the Bombers doesn't happen in the first place.
Oh, we can play chicken and egg this whole thing, right? And Andrew Harris stays in Winnipeg and cements his legacy here for his last 2 years if he shows up to camp in 2021 in shape. You know what I mean? So like, how far do you want to go back? Like, how far do you want to go? Like, who did what? Is someone said something to somebody or whatever? Like, yeah, I mean, that is the irony, and that's the beauty of this league. And that's what I'm saying. When I'm saying that, I'm not saying people should be mad at Andrew. I mean, do whatever you want to do. I think it's understandable to be upset that your local hero, the guy that you've watched, the guy whose jersey you've put on, is going to the enemy. And I also completely understand Andrew Harris's reasoning for going there and why it's why it's a soft landing spot. He's not going into enemy territory. He's going into a city that is enemy territory for Winnipeggers that has a bunch of familiar faces that he knows and trusts.
Jeff Hamilton, the Winnipeg Free Press with us. Moving on from Harris, which was the sort of juicy story of the last 24 hours or so. There's still a lot of work to be done for the Bombers. I mean, they making any progress on some of these holes in the organization, and at the same time with bringing a few more of the fellas back that do not yet have extensions, at least publicly announced?
Well, I mean, I think there's some, pieces of business there. There's obviously the guys that everyone's interested in, of course. I mean, but the pieces before, Willie Jefferson's locked up, Evan Holmes locked up. He was a guy that a lot of fans were concerned about, especially when you consider Tyrell Ford, right? Tyrell Ford is a guy who's been dabbling in the NFL. He's got a ton of workouts, doesn't have any contracts at this point, which tells me that he's probably coming back to the CFL. We'll see what happens here, but how much will that cost? That's an interesting position for him to be in. I mean, he's a guy that, from what I'm understanding, wants $200,000 a year as a Canadian DB. He plays a position that usually goes to an American. So in a way, he is obviously a ratio breaker. It's just whether or not you want to allocate your money to a Canadian corner. So Tyrell Ford's a playmaker. He's a guy that you would miss if you don't have him. And depending on what can happen with Leon Dobson, another guy who, from what I understand, is looking for starter money, much like Drew Desjardins before him. He's looking for a significant raise. If if you pick him, can you afford Tyrell Ford? And if you don't go with Liam Dobson there, do you now, because now do you need Tyrell Ford for the Canadian ratio? Well, the Bombers have been in a great position for years now that they've started 8, 9, upwards of 10 Canadians. So they need to figure out where they want their money to go. Then you look over at receiver, right, Huss? Another big question mark between Dalton Schoen and Kenny Lawler. And, I know this feels a lot like last season when it seemed impossible that Brady Oliveira and Dalton Schoen would both be rejoining the Bombers, given their hefty raises. And somehow Kyle Walters was able to pull a rabbit out of his hat. I don't know if he's got the same magic this year. I don't know if they can. Here's the thing. I don't know if they can afford to. I don't know if they want to. I don't know if they want to spend, upwards of $500,000 on 2 receivers, right? They don't, no receiver. Now the Bombers aren't an example of this, but no team that's paid like $280 plus or 280 plus for a receiver. Bombers are part of this. Kenny Lawler last year have won a Grey Cup. So, you look at that and, do you really want to? They would love to have both those players back. There's no doubt about it, especially with what you saw with Kenny Lawler at the end of the season. There were certainly some mistakes that he would make in the offsides and whatnot, but he definitely showed up and caught balls. He's probably more expensive than Dalton Schoen, who's coming off a serious knee injury and missed all of last season. So there's still a lot of balls to figure out, and we are inching closer to that February 2nd legal tampering week-long window, but it's not. I don't think it's very urgent for Winnipeg right now. I think they just need to figure out what they want to do, and of course when they want to do it. I am a little concerned about who cares if I'm concerned, but having no offensive coordinator. Like, to me, it's just I don't know how Mike O'Shea envisions that role. Like, how much Mike O'Shea is not an offensive guru. He's a defensive guy, right? So how much of input is he going to want to give his offensive coordinator with players they pick up, with players they sign? Well, he did make a mention. He didn't confirm it, but he did seem pretty confident that they would get their OC in before the February 11th free agency open. So I assume that move needs to be made in the next week or so here. So I guess we'll just have to wait and see. There's still a lot of balls in the air, and I know it's particularly frustrating for fans who see other markets, getting deals done, getting seemingly ahead of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. I would say this to that though, the Bombers know what they're doing. They know. They know who they want. They know how to get it done. They just need to get it done here. And that's, still very much a waiting game. It feels like nothing's happening. And then I can see probably the next week, a lot happening here.
I do wonder how much more is on Kyle Walters' plate right now. With the loss of Ted Gavaya, the upcoming draft and free agency. This is already a busy time for a guy that had 2 pretty close lieutenants, if you will. And, with Gavaya leaving, it does seem like, Kyle probably has a lot on his plate right now, even more than a normal year.
Yeah, I think that's fair. They also brought in they as I alluded to for weeks, they brought in a new kind of scouting, with Brock Sutherland there, and just the idea of having him, that group there focus on scouting, right? Danny Mack, obviously. So it's a little different, right? I don't know how much. They also have other people. Darren Cameron's obviously is, a massive support in those things. Like, I don't know how much. I shouldn't say. Well, Ted obviously would take his share of contracts, and they might group out, prioritize guys and have those conversations start and whatnot. I just think with the way the Bombers have been for years, now I'm not saying it's easy to lose somebody and just kind of figure it out, but I do think that those processes are pretty, are pretty firmly entrenched within the organization. And if it's not Ted Gavaya doing it, it's somebody else doing it. They're scratching away at the work. I just think Mike O'Shea is particular with personnel. As I mentioned in the past, as anyone who's watched the Bombers can see, he doesn't just welcome people in easily. It's a process. It's a process that might seem maddening to others from the time it takes, but it's his process, and he's going to exhaust it until he feels he has the right guy. But until then, I mean, there is draft prep stuff like that. There's obviously identifying key free agents. But right now it's, I think for Winnipeg, particularly with obviously the Grey Cup here this year, is going to want to focus on getting their guys, the guys that they want in, and then the rest of the pieces fall. You hear Kyle Walters and other GMs around the league say it all the time. You have to, you have plan A, plan B, plan C, and they might not vary too much from one another, but they are crucial in nailing down because they decide the rest of the moves. So all those moves that fans are like, well, what about this guy? Well, what about this guy? Guys who are seemingly less important in the to-do list. Well, once those things get figured out, those, again, I don't even want to say lesser prioritized issues, but those things nonetheless, they start going boom, 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 boom. Once you get, the things at the top done.
Hammer, before we go, I will probably be asking all of our guests this question. I asked Rennie a little earlier. AFC Championship game on Sunday. Who you got? Chiefs, Bills?
Do something a little different this time. Can't wait for the Chiefs to kick their ass, Huss. Oh my goodness. The Chiefs are going straight to, it's repeat city, buddy. What is it? It's three-peat now for them? Three-peat? Yeah,
Three-peat.
exactly.
No team's ever done it.
Yeah, no. Chiefs all the way. Buffalo who cares about the Bills? All that stuff, right? Go Chiefs, know whether man. I just want you to have, I just want you to smile, man. The more you smile, the better the shows are. We all
give
win.
Me a little bit of support in the us against the world.
I saw that Chiefs propaganda you posted the other day about the penalties. Is that all true?
Yes, that's all true.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, I didn't know.
That is true. There's a lot of people that suffer from CDS right now, and I will say this: I have nothing but time for Buffalo, and it's not the case with the Ravens. Or the Texans.
Or the Lions? Are you a Lions guy?
Well, the Lions are, I had a soft spot for the Lions. Yeah, listen, if you're terrible forever and then finally get to that point, the Bills are a little different because they have been really good for a long time. They've lost 4 Super Bowls. They have never been there. And they haven't been able to get over that hump. But it's like, in some ways, it's like a WWE story. Remis is always talking about Cody Rhodes finishing the story at WrestleMania. Well, this is like one of these wrestling programs it's gone for 4 years, and it feels like, okay, Josh Allen has another chance to finally win the belt. And we'll see whether it happens. But, the Bills Mafia is as great of a fan base as there is in sports. Allen is a hell of a player. I really have no ill will whatsoever, but it's easy to be that way when your team is 3-0 against them when it counts. Listen, the Bills gave the Chiefs the one loss in the regular season. Obviously, they lost to Denver when they didn't play anyone at the end of the season, but that one loss was to Buffalo. So it sets up an amazing, amazing matchup. And as we get closer to the weekend, we'll have more on that right now. But as far as these CFL streets goes, we're waiting for a little more news on the Bomber off season, and it's a little bit strange that we're getting towards the end of January and some things that, honestly, I kind of thought we'd know maybe by the end of December are still sort of out there. But nothing gets people talking more than an Andrew Harris Bomber Rider story that's all wrapped up, and people can read everything that Geoff has in the latest Winnipeg Free Press. Keep those ski pants on, buddy. It's going to be a little nicer the next few days. You might be able to ease off on it briefly, but don't put them away anytime soon. I think we're going to need them quite often the rest of this winter.
Yeah, I spent like 10 minutes trying to look for my gloves in the hair at the hair salon I was at this morning, and after waiting, I just gave up, and then I took them off, and I realized they were in my pants, in my ski pants. So like,
do you have a male or female hairdresser, stylist, whatever the term is?
Evelure Hair. It's Marina. Been going to her for 20 years. She's the best.
What, did Marina have any comment when you rolled in snow pants?
Oh yeah, she just said, "Oh, that's okay." I said, "Oh, okay, great,
hey,
perfect."
Smart.
Hey,
way to tackle the Winnipeg winter.
Ski pant friendly.
As they say.
All the best places are.
Bruce Boudreau showed up on TSN last night in a suit with runners and white socks. I think we should normalize that. And in the Winnipeg winter, wearing ski pants wherever the hell you want should also be normalized. It's only common sense. Hammer, have a great one, buddy. Thanks for doing this.
Always a pleasure, my friend. Take care.
Good stuff. Hey, gang, let's get why not question of the day today. And I know there's already been some comments in, but thoughts on Andrew Harris going to the Riders to be their running backs coach, or if you'd like to fill in the blanks. Andrew Harris to the Riders is like blank. We'll get to your fan feedback in just a minute. That's the why not question of the day for Not Autocorp over at Waverly McGillivray. Andrew Harris going to the Riders is like fill in the blanks in the chat. Jets, of course, no practice today. That was canceled right before it was supposed to go. Chevy is speaking with the media. Murat's going to join us tomorrow. He is there, so we'll look forward to that. I will remind you, the Jets get another crack at Utah Friday night here in Winnipeg, and another crack at Calgary, the two teams that they've just lost to. Calgary on Sunday at 5 p.m. at home. So tickets available for both of those games. Pick them up. And if you're wondering about our next WST game, it is coming up on February the 7th, a Friday night, heading into the break. So it'll be your last chance to see the team play in a few weeks. It'll be your opportunity to get together with us and try to go 5-0, a perfect record so far this year with our WST games of the month. And what you're going to want to do is go to winnipegjets.com/WST and grab your tickets. Your ticket includes a beverage, which will be redeemable through the Jets 360 app at the game. And would love to see you join us as we look to make it 5-0. Again, February 7th, Jets Islanders, Friday night. Going to be a great kickoff to the weekend. Get your tickets today and join us as we look to go 5-0 for the WST game of the month this week. Listen, before we get to some fan feedback for fans first, I do want to give a big cheers to our friends at Winnipeg's favorite local brewery, Little Brown Jug.
Day in and day out, learning new techniques, approaching new concepts, and living out the thrill of achieving your goals. Building a craft beer is no different. While you spend your hours on the ice, we spend ours here, brewing our trademark beer. Again, and again. Here's to pushing the status quo and challenging ourselves to build something memorable. 1919 by Little Brown Jug.
All right, tomorrow night, Wednesday night, it'll be a little warmer, so maybe you can actually get out of your home for a couple days, for a couple hours, and why don't you gather with your crew at your local Boston Pizza for a big game in the Central Division between the Jets and Avalanche. Jets looking to get back in the win column and win the season series against Colorado. 2 shutouts here in Winnipeg. And a loss in Colorado on New Year's Eve. A big test for the Jets. Fingers crossed Adam Lowry will be in the lineup. We'll have an update on that for tomorrow's show as well. But listen, when we're talking about the Jets on the road, there's no better place to get together with your gang than your local Boston Pizza. Ice cold schooners, world-famous BP wings, gourmet pizzas, and for all of January, every Tuesday, every day is Pasta Tuesday, with great deals and specials on all of your favorite Boston Pizza pasta dishes for Jet games and every day. Make it BP. And of course, if you are not willing to get to the point to leave your home yet, you can get it hot and fresh to your door by ordering online at bostonpizza.com. And hey, as we get ready for this push, heading into the Four Nations Cup, the tournament, I actually was with my pal Greg from Royal Sports down in KC on the weekend. 50 years. I'd said 40 years now, but they just had their 50th anniversary. Family owned and operated right here in Winnipeg with the legit, the most awesome sports store that you will find maybe anywhere. And he did tell me that they are expecting any day to get the Canada jerseys for the Four Nations Cup. And he said they will definitely have Josh Morrissey jerseys. And we're still holding out hope that maybe, based on his play all season long, but since they named the team, if there is some sort of an injury, we might be seeing some 55s on Team Canada jerseys as well. But always your number one spot for your favorite Jets gear, Bomber gear, really sporting gear of any type. Royal has it. And very shortly, I'll let you know when they're in, the Four Nations jerseys for Team Canada. And I actually did see them. They look really, really nice. And it'll be very, very cool to be able to rock a 44 Josh Morrissey Team Canada jersey. And I know those will go quickly when they show up. Royal Sports is at 750 Pembina Highway. Make sure to follow them on Instagram at Royal Sports Winnipeg for the latest drops for things like the Canada gear for the Four Nations Cup. Great deals and the latest sales and merchandise available over at Royal Sports. All right, let's get to the fan feedback right now. There's quite a bit on the Harris to the Riders. I knew Kabilis would go there. Harris to the Riders be like the refs making calls in favor of the Bills instead of the Chiefs, LOL. Any chance to get a shot in, right? Harris to the Riders is like he does not exist, says Dan, Jets fan. It's like Bill Belichick taking over as the coach of the Chiefs. Julian Labossiere, Andrew Harris is going like the Riders is like the refs calling penalty of the Chiefs. What the heck? Everyone's making the same joke. Of course, our fan feedback brought to you by Fans First, your number one spot for getting Winnipeg Jets tickets on the resale market, and your best option if you're a season ticket holder or have a couple of extra tickets to sell your seats on the secondary market. The best customer service in the biz. And bottom line, there is no fees. When you're on fansfirst.ca and you're seeing a price for tickets, what you see is what you pay, which is a stark contrast to any of the other ticketing sites that you may have used before. Back to more of it. There is lots of ski pants talk after Hammer's spot right now. Hammer in a snowsuit. Hammer is evolving from ski pants to sweatpants. But there is there's a lot of Bills propaganda actually in the chat right now, but a lot more on the Andrew Harris situation. And let's see, where I just missed one. I had a really good one. Curious how he does. First coach in the job when he learns in Regina and comes back to Winnipeg after getting the kinks out. That would be quite interesting. And Perry William Cousin, what's green and runny? Two things, snot and Rider fans. The rivalry never dies. It never dies. Give us your thoughts on Andrew Harris heading to Regina. And, of course, on the Jets. Let us know. Fan feedback brought to you by Fans First in the chat right now. Fansfirst.ca, by fans, for fans, no fees. All right. We have to, you know what? I might do this first, Reem, because I might have to, we are going to talk about the memory of Tom McVie coming up. Of course, the former Winnipeg Jet coach passed yesterday. We're going to have Geoff Kirbyson pop in. I will mention, we'll let Reem go through the Coolbet lines a little bit later on. But as you all slam myself, me, and the Chiefs in the chat, if you want more on the weekend at Arrowhead and the divisional round of the playoffs, I'd suggest, if you didn't see it, go over to Edmonton Sports Talk and check out today's Lock Shop, with the exception of my internet driving me crazy and popping out of the show and then back in. It was a great, great conversation. And hey, I mean, listen, I had a great time. Always do down at Arrowhead. Chiefs got it done. While people are focusing on the refs, they might want to think about the Texans special teams being a disaster. That's kind of a big part of football. And a Chiefs team that when they needed it in the second half got the blitzes turned up by Spags, sacked C.J. Stroud 8 times, and certainly deserved to win that game. It sets up one of the juiciest matchups we could have possibly had this year back in Arrowhead for the Arrowhead Invitational. The Bills are coming to town Sunday at 5:30. could very well be the game of the year. Cannot wait for it. We'll certainly have some NFL content as we get closer to the weekend. But just on that, Remo will go through all of the NFL lines, the NHL lines tonight, because there are quite a few games. We'll get a partner parlay up, but just on the NFL, because I've been asking everyone about it. The Chiefs open as 1.5-point favorites at Coolbet. They're now 2-point favorites. The money line, though, this is a game I don't think you'll even touch the point spread. Bet who you think is going to win. Chiefs minus 125, Bills plus 106, and then there's the Eagles. Eagles 6.5-point favorites at home to the upstart Washington Commanders. What a performance by Jaden Daniels on the weekend. Putting together arguably the greatest rookie season in National Football League history. I know Dan Marino obviously is right up there. Probably the highlight of his entire career was that rookie season. But if the Commanders can win this game, I mean, to go into a 4-win team as the number 2 overall pick and completely reverse the fortunes of that team, it's not something we've really seen before, and they are 1 win away from doing exactly that and going to the Super Bowl. And I don't know what Coolbet had on the Commanders at the start of the year, but I'm pretty sure it would have been probably in excess of 100-1. The Commanders, again, underdogs in this game. They were 9.5-point dogs last week. They're only 6-point underdogs this week, plus 220 on the money line. Eagles 6-point favorites and minus 270. All of that is in there right now. And I see we've also even got some NFL futures. Oh, that's just remaining. Eagles are the favorite to win the Super Bowl, which is a little weird because it was the Lions and the Chiefs going into last week, but whatever. Philly plus 185, despite their passing game being non-existent so far. The Chiefs are the slightest favorite above Buffalo. Chiefs plus 225, Bills plus 230. And hey, if you're a believer in the Commanders as the team of destiny, still get them at 7-1 right now for the Washington Commanders. All right. Remo will hit the hockey games later on, but it's all there at Coolbet. We've got a partner parlay set up as well for tonight's action. And you can check that out. We got Ottawa, Dallas, and Vancouver boosted up to plus 551. But for older Jet fans who recall the WHA heyday, you'll remember Tom McVie coming in and righting the ship in the 78-79 season and taking a broken locker room, bringing them together and making them champions. And then, of course, Tom McVie, the first head coach in NHL Winnipeg Jets history in the 79-80 season into 80-81. A true, unforgettable character. Passed away yesterday. And, our friend Geoff Kirbyson, who has done so much work in and around the glory days of the Jets and the WHA, putting together the reunions, and, of course, writing about it in Broken Ribs and Popcorn. His book was a perfect time to bring Kirb on to talk about a man that he knew quite well, his history and legacy in Winnipeg with the Jets, and to remember Tom McVie. So let's bring in Geoff Kirbyson right now on Winnipeg Sports Talk. Kirb, always great to have you on the program, but obviously a really unfortunate news that a guy you became very close to passed yesterday that is such a big part of Winnipeg hockey history.
Yeah, Tommy McVie was one of the good ones. He was he's obviously a great, a very good coach, great hockey man. He was in the sport for 70 years. But he was just a great guy. And so when we brought all those guys in for the 79 reunion, nobody was more appreciative than Tommy. And he told me that ad nauseum, man. You might have thought, oh, come on, he's laying on a little thick, but he meant it. And those players that he coached meant a lot to him. And he would tell me regularly how much he couldn't believe how unbelievable Lars-Erik Sjoberg was. And he loved Terry Ruskowski. He just loved that Ruskowski put his health and body on the line for that team to help them win the FA Cup in '79. And Tommy was like if he saw you play hockey 50 years ago, he would know if you were a left or a right shot. So he would joke that when elephants forget, he would remind them. So all around great guy, and it's I'm going to miss calling him. I used to call him fairly regularly just to check in on him and see how he's doing, and he would talk about the Jets, what he'd seen, and so it'll be tough not calling him and just hearing his gravelly voice and laughing my face off.
Kirby, we'll get to his coaching career because he, well traveled and decorated, was, kind of was given the reins as to some teams in some pretty tough situations as his career went on. And I'd imagine because of that Avco Cup championship with the Winnipeg Jets certainly would be one of, if not the true highlight, winning a championship here in Winnipeg, of his entire coaching career.
He wrote the foreword for Broken Ribs and Popcorn, and in there he said it was the best team he ever coached and the best time of his life. Because you have to remember that he started out coaching the Washington Capitals in the mid-'70s, and they were horrible. He came in right after they had the worst season of all time, winning 8 games, including 1 on the road. So he took over the team the next year, I believe. And so they weren't much better. And then he got let go, and he told me that the day he got fired from Washington, his phone was ringing off the hook. And they thought, okay, well, somebody will call me and I'll get some kind of offer. And then for the next week, phone didn't ring. And got to the point where he was asking his wife to go and check if there was a dial tone and see if the phone was still connected. And then John Ferguson, and McVie will also say that he was driving everybody nuts. He's driving his wife nuts because he's home all the time. The postman started walking on the other side of the street, and then he got the call from John Ferguson saying, "I need a coach. Can you come to Winnipeg?" And he couldn't get here fast enough, and he inherited a team here that was sort of in disarray. If you remember, this is the year that the Jets got a bunch of Houston Aeros to come up, and they no longer had the Hot Line, so the heart of that team was a lot different than it was in previous years. And so Tommy came in, and he didn't care who you were going to work, and he skated the Jets into the ground, and they and he was made no bones about being a military drill sergeant, and they got in great shape, and they were disciplined, and they were a different team from when he took over, and they rolled through the playoffs, and even despite finishing way behind Quebec and Edmonton in the regular season, they rolled through the playoffs and won the last Avco Cup.
Curb, through the reunion of 3, 2, 1. Curb, through the reunions that you put on, and obviously the books, you spent a lot of time speaking with the players that played for Tom, and obviously got together with them when you brought them all back here together in Winnipeg for what was such an amazing weekend. What did the players have to say about Tommy, and how did they look back at his time playing for a guy that was tough on them at times?
Well, I got a text message yesterday from Kim Claxon saying that if Tommy, when he came in, he brought the team together, and if Ferguson didn't bring him in, we don't win the Avco Cup. And so, a lot of the guys who I talked to, I can't think of anybody who had a different opinion of him. Whether it was, and Peter Sullivan messaged me yesterday too, said he couldn't say enough good things about Tommy. And I know Rich Preston was a regular caller to Tommy just to check in on him, see how he's doing. And all of those guys at the reunion, the response when they all saw him for the first time was something that they all their eyes lit up, huge smiles, and then it just was story time. And they all had great Tommy stories. Tommy had great stories about them, of course, and they loved him. And he got up there. Of course, I knew as the organizer that we had 2 events. One was sponsored, and one with fans. And the highlight is going to be just passing the mic over to Tommy and letting him go. And he got up there, and it was like you wouldn't see a better comedy show anywhere in town. And he got up there and told self-deprecating stories about himself, and he told stories about, but more importantly, he told stories about the players. and how great they were, and how they were the best team he ever coached, and gave him the best time of his life. And for him, he never forgot that at the beginning of 1979, he was yelling at his postman, and then in June he is in a convertible driving down Portage Avenue with the AFCO Cup, and he never forgot that, and he always appreciated his time in Winnipeg. And don't forget, when the Jets hosted the Heritage Classic game in 2016, Tommy was one of the coaches, and he loved that.
You know, Kerb, while there were real good times when he first came to Winnipeg, and you know what, maybe just before we move on to the NHL, you mentioned, you know, briefly the change in the Jets during that WH8 era with the Hot Line leaving and all those guys from Houston coming over. And it really did seem like, I mean, those guys all hated each other from playing each other for a long time. And like, I'm not sure the MO was just to get them to sort of initially all hate the coach for, you know, making them skate that, but he did sort of in a weird way bring them together. And he deserves a ton of credit, as you just mentioned, from speaking with so many of those guys, kind of taking a broken locker room, getting everyone together on the same page, and then coming up big at the most important time of the year, and of course, the playoffs and winning the AFCO Cup again.
Well, Houston and Winnipeg were two of the fiercest rivals in the WHA. And with the Hot Line, they won a couple cups there, the Jets did, and Houston was always right there with them, and they had some wars. And so none of them wanted to come here. None of the Arrows, even though the team was disbanding, wanted to come here. They wanted to go anywhere but Winnipeg. They were trying to get their agents to have them become free agents, trying to look for other options. And then when they had no other option, they came here. But when the Jets would lose a game, the Winnipeg guys would blame the Houston guys, and the Houston guys would blame the Winnipeg guys. And they'd go out for drinks after games or after practices for lunch, and they'd go their separate ways. So it was two different factions. And Tommy played a big role in that. I know that Terry Ruskowski and Lars-Erik Sjoberg played a role in that also. But he took a team that was really going nowhere. They were kind of treading water, and which drove John Ferguson crazy, of course. And when he got the chance to bring Tommy in and get rid of Larry Hillman, who wasn't his coach in the first place, he did, and obviously it turned out to be a great move.
Moving into the National Hockey League, he was the first coach of the Winnipeg Jets in the NHL, and we knew what happened to the roster. It got absolutely ravaged. This team was destined to have a long season, despite the excitement of moving into the new league, and he survived that, and then, you know, made it through 28 games of the second season before, like every coach, you're hired to be fired, and he moved on. I imagine that was tough for John Ferguson, considering what Tom McVie had done for the organization in the past. But maybe just speak to the challenge that was put on his desk when the team moved to the NHL, which was really an unwinnable battle.
Well, Tommy told me many times that after the AFCO Cup win and the parade, that he'd be on the softball circuit, and he'd be going around town playing these softball games, and people would be saying, the AFCO Cup in 79, Stanley Cup in 80. And Tommy'd be saying, like, listen, like, they're taking all of our players. We're not going to have anybody left, and we're not going to be any good. And it's going to cost more money for the NHL, and people didn't care. And all summer he preached that, and nobody cared. And then he said, 5 games into the new season, they cared. And so he oversaw a roster that was a bunch of cast-offs from other teams. And the NHL, of course, wasn't as favorable to, like, the NHL wasn't going to let teams from the Rebel League come in and be good right away. They've just spent 7 years hating this other league and denigrating it. To have those teams come in and win right away, that would be a disaster for the NHL. So they made sure that even after taking all the players away, except for the Jets got to protect 2 skaters and a goalie, then they let them draft at the end of the list. So after all the other teams had drafted. So the Jets were destined to be a bad team. And but Tommy didn't change his ways. He, like, even though the Jets had trouble winning games, they weren't out of shape. They weren't going to lose because they were out of shape. And they won 20 games in the first year, which is a minor miracle, I think, in a lot of people's views. And then in the second year, it was more of the same, but they kept finding ways to lose in the last minutes. So I think they had back-to-back games early in the season where they had 2-goal leads late in the third period, and the opposition scored twice with the goalie pulled. Back-to-back games. So that doesn't happen very often. Imagine it happening in 24 hours. So it weighed on Tommy, and he was at the Winnipeg Arena all the time. He was sleeping there sometimes, and he was worried about his health because he lived and died with that team. And he and Fergie went back to Vancouver as kids, and it was really tough for the two of them that Fergie had to let him go. And Tommy kind of said, "You got to let me go," because it was at the point where, they were at 25 games without a win, and coaches don't keep their jobs at that stage of the game. That broke Tommy's heart. He loved coaching here, even though he's coaching a tough team. He knew there was a future there. The previous summer, he was out at a rookie camp, and he saw Howardchuk, and he came back, Dale Howardchuk, of course, and he came back and he said, this is in Brandon, and he said to Fergie, "I know who we're drafting first next year." And so he could see the light at the end of the tunnel, and he just never got to experience that.
Remembering Tom McVie, former APCO Cup champion coach of the Winnipeg Jets, who passed away yesterday, with Geoff Kirbyson, the author of Broken Ribs and Popcorn. And Curb, one before, one after the Jets, but McVie holds a very unique distinction of being the only man to coach 3 different expansion teams in the National Hockey League. And of course, that the guy's got a lot of stories when you've got that sort of a background.
Yeah, he coached, of course, the Capitals, as we talked about, coached the Jets, and he coached the New Jersey Devils. And so he had a lot of retreads and has-beens and never quite weres. And he had one player but throughout the whole thing, though, he had a sense of humor about it. So he had one player in Washington, so we just don't take his name. Yeah, Harvey Bennett, who was complaining to Tommy about being on the fourth line. Like, why am I on the fourth line? And Tommy had enough of him, and he said, "Because we don't have a fifth." And so what do you say after you've been zinged like that? But even through the tough times, Tommy did his radio show on CGOB and the coaches show, and he would give away. There'd be prizes to give away, right? And so 2 tickets. The first prize was 2 tickets. Second prize was 4 tickets. And he loved telling the story about how his son was. It was a boy who was complaining that in a divorce settlement, and he said, and the judge said, "Well, who do you want to live with?" "Well, I can't live with my dad because my dad beats me." And "Oh, okay, well, maybe you'll go live with your mom." "No, my mom beats me too." "Well, who do you want to live with?" "Oh, I want to live with Winnipeg Jets. They don't beat anybody." So super self-deprecating, and I guess you had to have a sense of humor when you were dealing with those situations, because when you're looking down the bench and you got to put out Hilliard Graves, if you can't laugh about it, I don't know what you do. But Tommy, and if you talk to any of the reporters or broadcasters who covered the team back then, talk to Kurt Keelback, Bob Ruring, they loved talking to Tommy because it was, no matter what happened, they got great quotes out of it and they got a laugh out of it.
If his career was later, he would have been an absolutely perfect guy to get into television. Having had those sort of experiences. I mean, you see those great characters that really shine on TV, when they don't have the pressure of coaching the team and they can just sort of be themselves. And I think anyone that's ever crossed paths with Tom realizes that he was nothing if not genuine and really authentic. What was his post hockey life like? What was he up to? And I mean, maybe if you could just tell us and our listeners about how much he embraced the WHA reunions and just how special that group of players was to him, considering that was the championship he won, amongst being dealt some of the worst hands in hockey history with some of his other coaching gigs.
Well, first of all, there was no post-hockey career for Tommy because he was always in the game. He was in the, I think it was like 65 or 70 years that he was in hockey. And as he said, he considered it that he never had a job his entire life.
Kirb, Tom was a hockey lifer by all accounts. I mean, what was life for him like post-coaching career? And just tell us a little bit about how much he embraced the opportunity to be a part of the WHA reunions and be back with these players that he won a championship, considering the tough hands he was dealt pretty much everywhere else when he was a head coach.
Well, after Tommy left Winnipeg, he, as we said before, worked for New Jersey, and then he became an assistant coach with the Bruins. And after doing that, he was with the Bruins for the rest of his career. And he was a scout and then an ambassador. So, as he says, you don't need to feel too sorry for me with all of his tales of woe, because he was on the ice when the Bruins won the Stanley Cup in 2011. He got called down from the press box, and he went down to the ice. Somebody handed him the Stanley Cup, and he lifted it over his head, and he's in the team picture, and he said, yeah, once you brought me down there, you couldn't get rid of me. So he, so that was obviously a gigantic highlight for him. But when he talked about it, he would say in his hockey room, he had all of his pictures, and he had his mini Stanley Cup, and right beside his mini Avco Cup. So at the 50-year reunion of the WHA in Whistler in 2022, he drove up from the States. He lived in Oregon, and he was our keynote speaker. And he got up there, of course, and he killed because he tells all his great stories. And but the thing that was amazing to me about Tommy was he was 87 at the time, and he wore a suit and running shoes. And everywhere he and I went, we walked, and I had to push myself to keep up with him. And he was going to the gym, and he was the fittest 87-year-old you'd ever seen. And unfortunately, he got compared to Bobby Hull at the time, who was younger and in a wheelchair. So Tommy was in great shape. He loved coming to see all those guys. They all loved, except Bobby, loved seeing him. Of course, he famously benched Bobby on Tuxedo Night in 1979, and Bobby never forgave him for it. But all the players who were coached by him loved seeing him, and all the players who weren't coached by him loved talking to him because they all got to share stories with him, and he was definitely a highlight of the event. And he sat outside. He would, like, if he and I were going to walk from one hotel to the next, he'd be out there for 20 minutes just because he's always early, and he would sit there and tell stories to just people walking by, and he'd sign pictures and cards and pose with people, and he loved it. He reveled in it. He loved the fact that he was being remembered, and he loved to do it with a bunch of the players that he loved.
Well, and it also was, obviously with his greatest victory as a head coach, a special place, but, he really did make a mark on Winnipeg during a relatively short time here at the helm of the Jets.
Yeah, he's here for about 2 years, I guess. And yeah, he by turning that team around, the Jets ended their WHA tenure on a super high note, an unexpected high note. The year before, everyone thought the Jets were going to win because when Ken Nilsson is your number 2 center, you got a pretty good team. But Tommy found a way of making players reach their potential and follow a system and be fit. And unfortunately, it just didn't work with the teams he had in the NHL with the Jets because the rosters had been decimated. But I think he liked to joke that he was just as good a coach as as Scotty Bowman. He just didn't pick the jobs as well as Scotty did. So he definitely was a great coach, and everyone's going to miss him.
Yeah, a true character and a big part of Winnipeg Jets, both WHA and NHL hockey lore. The late great Tom McVie, who passed away yesterday. Curb, great stuff, folks. This is a good time if you already have a copy, maybe to go back and reread, check the forward out. But Broken Ribs and Popcorn has a lot of the Tom McVie story as part of the Winnipeg Jets, and the author Geoff Kirbyson joins us now. Curb, thanks for the chat, buddy. Always great to catch up with you, although unfortunate news to bring us together today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And let me just say that Tommy was the star of that book, and he has funny things to say throughout it, even as things as mundane as checking into a hotel room in Quebec City saying, somebody complaining about their hotel room being small, and he goes, "You think your room was small? I put my key in and I broke a window." So he had a joke for everything, and yeah, legend.
Have a great one, Curb. Thanks for doing this.
Thanks for having me.
What a great conversation there between Hustler and Geoff Kirbyson. And yes, check out Jeff's books on Winnipeg Jets 1.0, the WHA days and the 80s, Broken Ribs and Popcorn, and the Hot Line. So big thanks to Geoff for joining us. And I did, he really nailed all of Tom's stories. They had a great relationship, and I did come across a clip of Hustler in an old interview with Tom McVie, and here's Tom talking about what he remembers about the Avco Cup parade in Winnipeg.
I'll tell you what, it was what I remember about it is Fergie and I, like Fergie got fired in New York, I got fired in Washington, and 3-4 months later, we're riding down to Portage in Maine. It was a beautiful, beautiful day, and Fergie and I are in one of the convertibles being driven with the Avco Cup there, and I said to Fergie, I said, 4 or 5 months ago, we couldn't get arrested. We couldn't even get a job. And now we're riding in a parade in a beautiful town. And the people went crazy when we got down to the, whether it be the courthouse or such. And so what I remember of that is, I was standing on my front porch in Bowie, Maryland with no job. And then I'm riding in a parade with Fergie, who we grew up together. And it was just fantastic. I'll never forget it.
There is Tom McVie in conversation with Hustler. That was from May 2019. Dug that one up. So, very nice conversation with Hustler and Geoff, paying tribute to the late Tom McVie, former Winnipeg Jets 1.0 head coach in the WHA and NHL as well. We're winding the show down. Time for the cool bet lines. Let's go through them as I bring them up right now. They got the combo cards, big slate of games, as it always is on a Tuesday night. I did enjoy the Winnipeg Jets Monday game. Wasn't on Amazon. It was on a nice 8:30 start. Not too late. I didn't think it ended at an okay time. Unfortunately, wasn't the most entertaining of games, but hey, they can't all be winners. We're going through NHL tonight. Canadians hosting Lightning. Rangers favorites over the Sens. Red Wings, little underdog. They've been playing so well since Todd McLellan was hired, but the Flyers are the favorite at home there. How about Dallas, Carolina? Carolina with a big comeback win yesterday over Chicago, winning in overtime. Dallas, their favorite, -122. Could that be a Stanley Cup preview? Nashville, huge favorites over the Sharks. And Edmonton, who will be without Connor McDavid, they are -154 favorites over Washington. And I did joke yesterday, how could they suspend McDavid? He's the face of the NHL. They would never do that. 3 games seems a bit excessive. We've seen similar cross-checks to the head get 1 game or 2 games. Spin the wheel, McDavid 3 games. I do wonder if there was a bonus game in there for the elbow that gave Marcus Johansson a concussion. We have the Florida Panthers, the Anaheim Ducks, Florida, big favorites, -263. And the Vancouver Canucks, they are favorites, -182 over Buffalo. Could we see any trades involving the Canucks very soon? And Yes, BA Split says Vancouver versus Oilers Thursday will be can't miss TV. I know it would be nice to see McDavid in there. They could have given a 1-game suspension and sent a message. We'll look at the combo cards here. I don't think there's any exclusives. Only Edmonton Sports Talk Parlay. Draisaitl 2, Bouchard 1, and Oilers to win. I do like these points from the point. Adam Fox for a point, Bouchard for a point, Quinn Hughes for a point. I mean, makes sense. They're usually pretty good. They got the shots, Caulfield, Hyman, Reinhardt over 2.5 each. I don't mind those. They give you a nice boosted number. What they got? Draisaitl and Ovechkin to score. Don't mind it. In the Lamplighters. Why not? They have the lock shot partner parlay. Sens over the Rangers, Stars over Carolina, and Vancouver Canucks all on the money line. And I think that's it. They got some golf specials. Oh, what is that? LCK, what is that? League of Legends? I don't know what. Yes, it is League of Legends. If you're into betting on League of Legends. Anyways, that is it for today's edition of Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Appreciate everyone who tuned in. If you are here, hit the thumbs up, hit the subscribe. We are here every day. And if you missed part of it, want to catch some on your phone, subscribe to our podcast. It comes out way more quickly with our new podcast host. I'm so pumped about how fast it comes out. No more waiting at your phone. No more scrolling, flicking it down for the refish. You don't have to do that. If you want to stay in touch with everyone, in the chat, for off hours chat, and we do have a Discord server, very active, especially in Jets games. So I would recommend that if you want to be, get deeper into the WST community. I think that's it. We've touched on just about everything. Tomorrow, Murat Atesh of The Athletic. He is in Denver. He's at the Kevin Cheveldayoff mid-season conversation. Him, Mike McIntyre. I'm not sure who else is there. They will be there. And we'll tee up Jets, Avs. Tomorrow we'll have some special guests as well. I know Murat definitely confirmed. So Hustler will be back tomorrow. I'm here winding it down. Appreciate everyone who's come out, said hi in chat, or even if you're just listening and enjoying it in the background silently. Thanks to everyone who's tuned in. Thank you to our sponsors who made this all possible. Again, Michael Remis, Andrew Paterson. Thanks to our guest today, Sean Reynolds. Who else did we have on? Jeff Hamilton and Geoff Kirbyson. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Bye-bye.
Oh, my God! Oh! Shut it down! Let's go home!
Thanks for tuning in to Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast feed at winnipegsportstalk.com.